Testing 1 2 1 2 3 4 5. Testing. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning, and welcome to Community and Protective Services Committee meeting for Friday, the 23rd of August, 2013. For those of you who are joining us this morning who are tuning in online, I'd remind for their benefit the speakers who are here today to please, when you come up to speak, hit the red button in front of you on the microphone so you can be heard online and captured accordingly. We do have a few absences this morning. Councillor Holmes and Councillor Cadre both indicated they couldn't be with us today, and welcome both Councillors Manette and Moffat, who both have items of interest today. So with that, we'll call the committee to order and ask if there are any declarations of interest. Nope. Seeing none, I'm asking for confirmation of the minutes. Minutes 25, June 20th, 2013. Carried. Thank you very much. There are two inquiries, communications to be received. Waiting pool hours and fire hydrants received.
Received.
Thank you. And we'll proceed through a quick consent agenda. Prior to doing that, however, Councillor Tierney has a motion to add a commemorative naming item to the agenda. He's doing so on behalf of Councillor Manette. And it is for a park that I understand there is a public event planned in the near future, so we want to get this done sooner rather than later. However, the comment period for it had not closed by the time the agenda was published, and so it couldn't be added at that point in time, but it has now since closed. Councillor Tierney, if you would.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, if we can add on the commemorative naming of Parc Royal Deuxième Régiment Park, if that's okay by my colleagues, I'd like to add that to the agenda.
Is that carried? Carried. Thank you very much. All right, so we will go through the consent agenda, and I will leave that one to the last. Commemorative naming Matt Bradley Arena in Stittsville. It is before us. There are no speakers, and it is not a contentious item. Is this carried?
Carried.
Carried. Thank you. Commemorative naming in Cumberland, Joseph Vesna Park. Again, no, not a contentious item, and there are no speakers.
Carried.
Carried. Thank you very much. Commemorative naming proposal for Ted Hay Rink in Barhaven. Again, not contentious, and no speakers registered. Carried.
Carried.
Carried. Thank you very much. The Mary Pitt Centre, we have two speakers, so we'll hold that. They are both in support, and I understand they both want to speak. Oh, I'm sorry, there are three speakers, one opposed, two in favor, and they all want to speak. Status update, Community and Protective Services Committee inquiries and motions. Is that carried?
Carried.
Thank you. Pineview Municipal Golf Course, and members of the committee, you've received this report. I haven't received any inquiries from you, and I know that Councillor Moffat is here if there are questions. And
it's very clear.
It's very clear, yes, and we don't have any registered speakers. Is there any desire to hold this for debate, or do you simply wish to carry it?
Carried.
Carried. Thank you very much. And as a incident side note, everything that is on today's agenda will be moving forward to next week's council meeting. Item number 7, the Opera Lira line of credit guarantee. This is the very first loan guarantee that has been issued by this term of council if it moves forward successfully. Members of committee, we have only one speaker. It's the executive director of Opera Lira, who's willing to speak if necessary. He's in support, of course, but is there any desire to hold this for debate? No? Was carried?
Carried.
Carried. Thank you very much. And now I will come back to the Parc Royal 22nd Regiment. Councillor Tierney, if you'd like to read the motion or the effective clauses.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank my colleague, Councillor Bob Manette, for his hard work on this. This is something that's very important to my Eastern Bloc colleague, especially to the French community. So I'm just going to go to the actual clause. Therefore, to be resolved that the Community and Protective Services Committee recommends that Council approve the proposal to rename Cumberland Seniors Park Parc pour l'année du Cumberland to Parc Royal 2e Régiment Park.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And it is my understanding from Councillor Manette that there is no one in opposition to the move to this name. There was some discussion among residents about the desire to keep the word seniors in the title, but Parks and Rec and Mr. Chenier have agreed for a signing opportunity there to commemorate that. So unless, Mr. Councillor, would you like to speak? No? Yes, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm not in opposition, but I'm concerned sometimes those items, we have a process. We have a renaming process. We have a staff. We have a committee will go, and I think the chair and I, we sit on them, and every council, when there's a changes to their neighborhood or to their area, they get engaged with it and involved. This way to protect the councillor and protect the organization as a whole. So why this was not going through the proper process, if I may? I think Councillor Manette, okay, go ahead.
I think actually the Deputy Clerk wants to speak to that.
Just to assure committee members that the process was in fact followed, it's just that the consultation period closed the Monday, this Monday actually, instead of, and the agenda went out on Friday. So in fact what you're seeing here is what would have been in a staff report, and in discussions with the ward councillor and the next date of the Community and Protective Services Committee for the council meeting, it's not going to align with the planned event. So the full commemorative naming process was followed. The only thing we didn't do was have the second commemorative naming committee, and we didn't have the report ready. We couldn't prepare a report because the consultation period ended on Monday.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So members of committee, is this carried? Carried. Thank you very much, and thank you to Councillor Manette, and congratulations to your residents. That leaves us with only one item. We'll come back to the commemorative name for Mary Pitt Centre and Heritage Walk, and of course, Nepean Heritage Walk. And of course, for those of you who have been following this item along, you'll realize that this has changed and evolved a little bit, and since the transition occurred from the park to the building, to Mary Pitt Centre, it has, I think, addressed the concerns of pretty much the range of folks who had prior concerns about the park. Notwithstanding, we have three speakers speaking. So first is Maria Ricci. Ms. Ricci, we'll ask you to come down, take your seat at the public delegations table, hit the red button in front of you, and you have 5 minutes from when you begin, right over here.
Hi, I'm Maria Ricci. I'm proud to be here to make a presentation in support of naming the building at 100 Constellation Drive, the Mary Pitt Centre. Mary Pitt was the last mayor of the former city of Nepean prior to amalgamation, and although her current commemoration is a cozy little court, not my words, there is also an application concurrent to this one to rename it Nepean Heritage Walk. For 20 years, Mary served as Ben Franklin's chief of staff and helped to shape Nepean into a debt-free city. When Ben Franklin became ill and could no longer hold office, she continued their vision as the next mayor of Nepean, the first woman and person of ethnicity to be elected in that regard. Having a building named after her that is close to Ben Franklin Place, with the possibility of being connected in the near future, is a befitting commemoration for a person that has excelled in public and community service, virtues that I've already included in the original application along with letters of support, and will not repeat due to time constraints. Instead, I wish to focus on the dealings of the past few months surrounding the proposed Mary Pitt Park and the real issues regarding that debate, or in reality, the lying, naming, name-calling, threats, racial slurs, misrepresentation, and bullying, to name a few. For my part, and those in support of commemorating Mary Pitt at the same stature as her male counterparts, which include all the former reeves and mayors, including her own former staff, We have presented our case fairly, honestly, and with integrity. Such has not been the case of the opponents, headed by Mr. Ron Ben, the president of the Centrepoint Association, and his small clan, who have knowingly lied and misrepresented facts, threatened, made racial and sexist slurs, resorted to name-calling, and a whole gamut of other discriminatory behaviors that we find quite appalling. We have been falsely accused of a liberal conspiracy that totally disregards the fact that our greatest proponent and supporter is Minister John Baird, along with a petition where I would hazard a guess that more than half are progressive conservative. In fact, the infamous online survey that Mr. Ben refers to was questioned by a resident of Centrepoint, who independently tested it with a group of conservatives and found it to be severely deficient and highly capable of manipulation, or in the words of the Centrepoint Community Association, not meant to be scientific. So if partisan politics was not involved, at least from party perspectives, I won't go into Mr. Ben's apparent political affiliation, then what has this controversy regarding Centrepoint Park really been about? Well, it has everything to do with principle and process, and a process that prevents the city from a principle of fairness and equality. The process, while it is meant to be transparent, is flawed in that it empowers people to deliberately discriminate against the women and people of ethnicity. So what we end up with is a process that is discriminatory to the majority of the residents of Ottawa. Imagine contributing as hard or harder and not being able to be acknowledged because of gender, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or whatever people like Mr. Ben and his clan decide may be deficient at any point in time. And I believe that the results support my argument. If we take a step back and look at the last 100 commemorations, thereby removing any historical biases, I would hazard a guess that less than 15% have been for women, and less than that for people of ethnicity. And while it would be tempting to blame the mayor, the councillors, and related committees for discrimination, I truly believe that in this case, it's really a case of the trees from the forest. That when you deal with a commemoration or anything of that matter that is on a case-by-case basis, the trees, sometimes you have to take a step back and look at the overall results, the forest. In this case, the women and people of ethnicity have been severely underrepresented, and we need for this committee and council to review what steps are necessary in order to offer all of its residents the same rights and privileges. Mr. Ben and his clan have and will continue to argue that they have a beloved affiliation to the Centrepoint name, and while I believe that the residents of Centrepoint are genuine in that regard, at least one of their community association representative agreed that renaming the park Brad Pitt Park would be acceptable. And apparently representatives of this association attempted to fast-track and submit a competing application after a young person who committed suicide. Imagine, after taking your own life due to bullying, to be used as a pawn. What an incredible example of moral injustice. And as I conclude, I would like to add that I'm not arrogant or an emotional Italian, as Mr. Ben has stated, but confident, and a proud Canadian who has a vote and a voice, both of which I will exercise to the fullest of my capacity, including going beyond the borders of Ottawa to ensure that the nation's capital employs processes that respect and treat all its citizens fairly. In a democratic society, you get the good with the ugly, and I'm confident in that 99% of the people of Ottawa are hardworking, decent, respectful persons who live in harmony and embrace each other's cultural and religious backgrounds, including the residents of Centrepoint. And I'm more confident that honesty and integrity will prevail, and truly hope that journalists like David Reevely will someday have a career path and working environment that will enable his journalistic integrity and talents to flourish. If we are to have a fair Ottawa, Council must be accountable not to the Ottawa citizen, but to the citizens of Ottawa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ricci. Appreciate your presentation. Do any of the members have questions for Ms. Ricci? No? Thank you very much for your submission. Next up is Linda Kinsella, or Kinsella. I'm sorry, I don't know which is the Kinsella. Linda Kinsella, if you make your way down, you have 5 minutes. You can take the seat that Ms. Ricci had, and 5 minutes from when you begin.
Good morning, Chair, Councillors. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm speaking as a woman who is very involved in this community, and I'm going to start with a story. Back in 2011, the City for All Women initiative set up a women's guide walking tour of the City of Ottawa. And upon doing this, one of the things that we did was walked around and noted some of the places that recognize and acknowledge the contributions of women. And one of the things that we did note, and at this time it was just downtown, we noted that of all the institutions and organizations represented in the downtown part of the City of Ottawa, the City of Ottawa as an organization does a very good job. They have Marion Dura Plaza, the Dorothy O'Connell Monument, Jean Piggott Place. Upon further thought, I looked at the city as a whole and looked at what places are commemorated based on various people. And while definitely the majority are of male in that, there is often, the city does quite a good job at commemorating women. And I think it's important to continue that in naming Mary Pitt Center as opposed to a small park. And it's also one of the things that the city has been good at is recognizing it based on the amount of contribution and the acknowledgement of how hard or what the contribution means to the city. Someone like Mary Pitt, who served as Chief of Staff to Ben Franklin in the city of Nepean for 20 years, was the first and only mayor of the city of Nepean, has contributed enough to the city that it is equal to the recognition of a building. And to have it there where it's in the future likely to be linked to Ben Franklin Place, to make that link between Ben Franklin, who she worked alongside for 20 years, is very important. We are, as a city, the councillors and mayors have continuously shown, whether it's places like Barbara Ann Scott Arena or Linda Tom Park or Elizabeth Manley Park, shown how strong we believe in supporting women and in the contribution. And I'm going to actually quote a bit from the requirements for commemorating. A commemorative name honors individuals who have demonstrated excellence, courage, or exceptional service to the citizens of Ottawa, Province of Ontario, and or Canada, provided extensive community service, worked to foster equality and reduce discrimination, made a significant, well, I'm going to stop there, because the important part is that Mary Pitt has made a significant contribution and has demonstrated excellent service to the City of Ottawa. And I think this is the important part, and I'm glad that this was carried, but in the future I think this is something that is important to remember, that a person who has spent that amount of time and given that deserves something like a building, and that people aren't asking because she's a woman or because of a certain ethnic background, but because of the contribution. But I do also, I'm going to add on this, say that it is important to continue representing and recognizing the contribution of women in the City of Ottawa. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Members of the committee, are there any questions for the delegation? No? Thank you very much for your presentation. The final speaker is Mr. Craig McCauley. Mr. McCauley, if you want to make your way down, you have 5 minutes from when you begin. Just press the red button in front of you when you want to get started. Actually, just move over one unless you've got a presentation to present there. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the opportunity to talk. I hesitate to say I'm against this motion because I'll be labeled as anti-woman, anti-ethnic, anti-politician, anti-Nepean, but I think the only fair thing to do would be to not go forward with this. Ms. Pitt has already been recognized. I think that's enough. The community has expressed itself very clearly. They don't want this. I think I'm against all political renaming. It's, as in the case of Lloyd Francis Boulevard in Bell's Corners, it was put through by the councillor because he had received contributions from the family, because Lloyd Francis was a good Liberal, and the community rose up and opposed this, and again, there was a compromise motion to rename the whole strip Robertson Road, which was bitterly opposed still by the businesses in Bell's Corners and the residents. So to sum up, I would ask that the mayor and the councillors do the right thing, at least one councillor do the right thing and oppose this, and perhaps apologize and put a moratorium on political renaming to reward fellow politicians. I think the public has had enough of this, and I don't think this should go forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation. And Deputy Mayor Al-Shantiri, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm not going to be afraid to be labeled I love women, because I do love Mary Pitt and what she did as a contribution to Nepean and to the city as a whole. But my question is, when you say the community has fed up with naming after politician or community activist,
yes,
who do you speak on behalf? Which community you speak on behalf?
Well, I speak just for myself. I was president of the community association in Bells Courts until I was deposed by the councillor. But I looked at the results. I'm shocked by the attack on the Centrepoint Community Association. I think that's dirty politics. On my community website, the vote was 20-1 to put a moratorium on political renaming, at least while these politicians are still alive. I don't think the politicians should be wasting so much time and money on rewarding each other.
But when you say the community as a whole, you're speaking about yourself. Is that correct? Because right now you don't represent.
Yes, I can't pretend that. I've seen all the surveys, and I've talked to a lot of people, and I think it's fair to say I represent the opinion of the vast majority who don't want this type of political, what's the right word? Pandering.
Just want to be clear, you're speaking on behalf of yourself, and that was clear for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Deputy Clerk, I have a question for you just on the issue of, community outcry, positive or negative. Originally, this proposal started out as Mary Pitt Park, and when that happened, there was lots of submissions on both sides of the equation, but my understanding is that even in that case, which is highly contentious, but it was in favor of Mary Pitt Park. And now that we've shifted it to a building, that, to my understanding, and briefly had a quick chat with you beforehand, we haven't had any kind of, I'll let you kind of fill in the holes there.
Correct. The overwhelming majority of the response, or overwhelming, it was a 2-1, 2-1 in favor of the naming of Mary Pitt Park versus opposed. Of those who were opposed, there were lots and lots and lots of reasons why people opposed, but the coalescence of a third of those in oppositions were simply they were attached to Centrepoint Park, and they were the term Centrepoint, and they weren't opposed to a naming for Mary Pitt. They were opposed to calling Centrepoint Park anything but Centrepoint Park because that was where they lived.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Members of thank you very much, Mr. McCauley. I'm assuming we had no further questions for you. Members of the committee, any comments? Councillor Shirelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, there are a few things I'd like to say, and before we get to the Mary Pitt part of it, the second part of this commemoration is the renaming of Mary Pitt Legacy Court to Nepean Heritage Walk. I think that's a good move for two reasons. It commemorates Nepean again, which you can't do enough of. And secondly, it really is a good descriptor of what that facility is. It's kind of like the Nepean version of the Hollywood Walk of Fame, where you have bricks of famous Nepean luminaries through the years. And it will help focus people who are looking for something Nepean-oriented to be able to identify it and come and see it. So I think that's good for now and much better for the future. Now, turning to Mary Pitt Center, I think, Mary was chief of staff for Ben Franklin for nearly 20 years. During that time, the city developed the pay-as-you-go policy and became a debt-free municipality, one of two in the province at the time, and really developed a strong relationship with community, where community laid down its expectations to the city, and the city fulfilled them in large part, and people were extremely happy with the achievements of those 2 decades. Number of people who worked under Mary and in different parts of the administration have already been commemorated, and of course Ben Franklin has been commemorated. But for that time alone, I think Mary Pitt deserves a commemoration. As we move, skipping over, and I'm going to just skip over the part where she was mayor, because whenever someone's a politician, when it comes to evaluating that aspect of their life, there are going to be people for and against. So why bother with even dealing with it when we can skip to the next part of her life, which is largely unrecognized, and that is where she became a key player in the Queensway Carleton Hospital's financial improvement. She helped drive the Care Grows West campaign, helped raise millions of dollars for the hospital that to that point was not as successful at doing that. She moved over to Villa Marconi as a non-Italian member of that board. It must have been difficult, but she helped reestablish the governance of that institution, and it's now on much better footing than it was when she got there. And chair of the Nepean Chamber of Commerce. I know that the Nepean Chamber has made significant contributions to the business life of Nepean over the past couple of decades, and she's been a key part of that. Mary's also worked with a number of charities and has been very helpful through the community. I think any third of her career would have warranted a commemoration, so certainly all 3 do. And I think this also clears up, this makes a strong statement to the Centrepoint community, which, although they were in the minority of the submissions, they did want to find a way to commemorate Miss Pitt without losing the name of their park, because that park has become both an emotional attachment to the community and a geographic one, because let's face it, the name comes from the fact that Centrepoint is a geographical center of this city, and something Councillor Tierney still grapples with. And so there is a good logical reason to try to keep the name and a good emotional reason. So when the community heard and came up with, in many cases, the possibility of commemorating Miss Pitt at 100 Constellation, opposition seemed to virtually vanish. Support emerged very quickly. And I think it's a perfect solution, because that complex used to be Nepean City Hall. That's reflected in the name Ben Franklin at Ben Franklin Place. And right behind it, the administrative center of the city, where most of our administrative employees work, will now carry Mary's name, and I think that's fitting.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Anybody else wish to speak on this item? No? Members of the committee, I'm not sensing any opposition. Is this item carried? Carried. Thank you very much. And congratulations to all of the folks, both for and against, who submitted their thoughts through this process. With that, we'll move on to notices of motion for consideration at subsequent meetings. Are there any? Nope. Any inquiries? Other business? And adjournment. Our next meeting is Thursday, 19 September 2013, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much.